Hello, I'm Sam Jones. Welcome to a special edition of Perspectives. You know, there are people in this world of ours blessed with the ability to hear things most folks will never hear. They can hear the colors in a rainbow or voices in deep snow-covered woods when there's no one there. Some people believe you can hear the clouds pass if you know how to listen. And they'll tell you the sounds are all around. You just have to learn how to listen. Today's guest learned how to do that a long time ago.
Well, you know, music is everywhere, and I hear music when I'm looking at nature, when I'm hearing the birds, when I'm looking out at the lake. You never know when you'll be inspired, but it's everywhere. And those songs come to mind, memories come to mind. It's wonderful, isn't it?
Meet Jana Jae, the woman known as the First Lady of Country Fiddle. People across the United States and around the world have heard the magic she can create. This is how most people know her. But just how did this Tulsa resident come to make her mark in an industry that was mostly male-dominated? Talent, of course, played a major role. So much talent, she was able to break through that glass ceiling and never look back. But you really need to know how it all started. When I look back at all you've done with your life, you know, the accolades, the accomplishments, the barriers you broke, the First Lady of the Country Fiddle, how does that feel to wear that?
Oh, that is really a nice thought, and a nice legacy, breaking some of those ceilings, and that is true. And of course, it wasn't planned that way. It's just how it evolved.
When you started, you were very young.
Very young.
How
I
old?
was two and a half actually. New York City. And both parents studying at Juilliard. And I'm this little first child, so guess what they had to do immediately? Put a little 8-size violin in my hand. And I was so tiny. You know, it's very, very small compared to this one. And I couldn't even reach the body of the violin. I was like, I had to hold it like this. And the little tiny violin.
We're in Jana's Tulsa home, where you can't help but hear music. It's everywhere you look, even when she's not playing. Each instrument is special. Watching her play, you would think her home is full of country music, but you'd be wrong. There's another side of Jana Jae you might not be familiar with. Remember, she said she was classically trained. This, too, is the First Lady of Country Fiddle. Juilliard, both parents, violin. One would think your path would have been classical, and yet somewhere someone influenced you to go country. How did that happen?
Well, that was an evolvement also, because I did start studying classically. My dad thought that I was going to be his child prodigy, you know, playing concert halls all over the world, and I had to practice an hour a day when I was 2. So my mom broke it up into little segments and made it fun. But eventually, I think I was 7, and we moved to Idaho and lived with my grandparents. My folks were divorced, and Granddaddy was a wonderful champion fiddle player. And
Enter the villain.
That's right. And we had family jam sessions every night. He taught me by ear all those tunes, all those dances. I learned how to do the waltz and the schottische and the polka and the accompanying tunes. So it was really fun.
And this is all before you could drive.
That was definitely before I could drive. But it was those years in Idaho, being raised kind of by my grandparents and my mom, were idyllic years, you know, in the 40 acres of fruit trees, and I would go through the blossoming trees and think of melodies and skip down and just think, you know, God is with me, this is beautiful. I felt like I was in heaven on earth. I remember they'd have friends come over and I'd play in the living room and so forth. But the first big performance was, I'll date myself, Sam, but it was the Ted Mack Amateur Hour. And I was 5 years old, and I played Hungarian dance number 5.
Contestants with Ted Mack and the original Amateur Hour.
I bet you brought the house down.
It did bring the house down. I remember it exactly. I remember walking in and seeing that grand piano and all these cameras and being a little bit overwhelmed. But it worked, you know. I had played so much by that point that it was just natural, like learning a language.
High school for Jana was different, really different from what the other girls went through. But for her, well, making magic with country music just seemed normal.
Well, high school was full of a lot of things. I mean, I was concert mistress of the orchestra. I soloed with the orchestra. I went to Interlochen, got a scholarship to Interlochen. Then I went to the International Music Camp in Puerto Rico. And so I had a lot. That high school experience really was huge. It was probably even more than college. You know, it was a growth spurt for sure, because I was studying classically, but I was also doing fiddle contests and learning all those tunes. Weiser, Idaho, the National Old Time Fiddle Contest, it's so huge now. It's right there by my folks' place, my grandparents' place. So that was a huge time. And then college, I went to Denver and then to Vienna. I did go to Vienna Academy of Music for a year. So that was part of my college experience. So I was still doing both. You know, the classical study, really in earnest studying classical.
Were you alone in Vienna, or did Mom go with you?
No, it was a program. It was Junior Year Abroad program. But then I enrolled because I wanted so desperately to study in Europe. So I enrolled in the Vienna Academy of Music. And so no, my folks weren't any place around. That was totally on my own. I did have the professor there at college in Denver was Viennese, Anton Landler. And he and his wife sort of adopted me, took me under their wing, and he said, you know, you should go with us to Vienna. And I was in love. I was engaged. I thought, I don't want to go to Vienna, but I did, and it was monumental in what it brought to my life. It was just amazing. You know, music everywhere. That is a city of music of all types, opera. And I had never been a fan of opera, but we did Stehplatz, standing room, at the opera, and just loved it. You know, it just turned me on to all these. And we went to the Kunsthistorisches Museum and had the curator there in some classes, and it was an absolutely marvelous experience.
It's hard for one to sit and listen to all that you've done classically, all the training you've been through, and then realize you made your mark in country music. How did that come about? How did you make such an incredible transition?
Well, it was really not a transition to me because it was growing up that way.
Did someone in the country music industry knock on your door? Was there one particular band that brought you in?
Well, of course, when Buck Owens hired me, that's what took me to the, the international scene and really professional scene. And that was fast. I mean, I had all this going. We were winning the fiddle contests and doing the bluegrass band, Clear Creek. We were playing and just, packing people in, and that was a blast. We had a lot of fun, and I was teaching in Reading, teaching music. They begged me to save their string program, and I had 2 little children, and I thought, gosh, I don't think I want to teach, but I did this to save the string program. And so that I started with 4 students, and that multiplied to 200, over 200 in that year. So that was kind of a big spurt. And Buck came to Reading to perform, and met Don Rich, and the guy at the college said, "You've got to meet this girl," told Buck he had to meet me, and told me I had to meet Buck. And so they invited me they did 2 shows, and they invited me to play on the 2nd show. And it was some months after that they called and wanted me to audition. At that time, our bluegrass band was playing at Tia Maria's in Sacramento. And there again, I had this decision to make. Did I really want to go down to Bakersfield and leave the band and audition? But I did it, and stayed in a hotel for a week waiting on Buck to listen to me. Jack McFadden, his manager, said, "You just stay right there. Don't go anyplace. Order room service. Don't go out of the room." And every day he'd call, "Are you okay?" And so I just played music, and that whole time waiting, and learned every single Buck Owens tune backwards and forwards there ever was. I had my Webcore tape recorder with me and had taped all of his tunes. And then they called and said, "Well, Buck's ready to hear you now." And I did about a 4-hour audition and played everything in the world. And then they said, "Okay, get on the plane." And that was it. I didn't have a chance to go back and get anything else. We just went right to Las Vegas.
Very much a whirlwind.
It was a whirlwind. That was really fast.
When did you marry Buck?
Oh, gosh.
The first time?
I don't know what year it was. I'm not good with years, Sam.
That's okay.
But it was, I'd been, on the show, and Buck was single, and, he was wonderful to me, as far as the shows and stage and all that. He was just wonderful. And we did really fall in love. And so I don't know, it was probably about the 4th year. I can't remember, 1970 something, 77, 8,
And later,
in there someplace.
you guys later divorced.
Well, that is a separate story and a separate interview because it's so complicated. It's hard to explain it in a short amount of time. But long story short, I moved to Oklahoma. And I'm so happy. It was another kind of a crossroads. I had to make a decision. Did I really want to struggle with all the things that were going on, or did I just want to, go on with life? And so I decided just to go on with things. And Jim Halsey and Sam Lavello is the producer of Hee Haw, and I said, "Sam, I need somebody to kind of guide a career, because I don't know you know, I'm going to go out on my own. And so he kind of introduced me to Jim Halsey. And of course, Jim had his whole stable of artists here in Tulsa, and they encouraged me to come to Tulsa. And boy, did that take. I just fell in love with Oklahoma and the people, and I have been here a long time.
You know, Oklahoma thinks of you as its own.
Well, I think of Oklahoma as my own. You know, my granddaddy, who the champion fiddle player in Idaho, he and my grandmother lived here. And I bought the house. They were going to take this house to widen the road, and I bought a house on Grand Lake because I thought I was losing this house. And Mother said, Mother in Idaho, she said, Jana, where is this house you bought? How far is that from Veneta? And I said, Mom, how do you know about Veneta? I barely knew Veneta existed. And here's Mother in Idaho. She said, just how far is that from Veneta? And I said, oh, about 30 miles. Why? And she said, Grandmother and Granddaddy used to live there.
Took your heart away.
I came full circle.
Now remember, she said she was actually trained classically. With that in mind, here is more of Jana Jae you may not know about. So, begs the question, is it a fiddle or is it a violin? Truth be told, it depends on the music you're playing at the time. And one is now a trademark.
The blue one, that's the one they gave me when I went to Hee Haw, and I was horrified. Here I am still holding my 1750 Finoli violin made in Milan, which is the area and the time the Strads were made. And this is my baby. I mean, this is what I've played and played and played and loved so much. And they wanted me to play a blue electric fiddle, and I was just horrified. I just couldn't believe it because I was kind of a purist. And but I thought, well, that, you know, they're in charge. I guess I better do what I'm told. So I did, and that was an amazing thing. They didn't know my name. They wrote to the girl with the blue fiddle, and it became a trademark. It was, and I'm still playing that blue fiddle.
Jana's home is full of memories. This is one, given to her by the late, great Chet Atkins. You have a piano here, I think, given to you by Chet Atkins?
Yes. I did a lot of work with Chet. A lot of shows with Chet, a lot of recordings with Chet, which are somewhere. And we had a great time, yeah. And, you know, I have been very privileged to work closely with some of these great artists. And still doing a lot of work with Roy Clark. We've done quite a few shows over the last few years and just adore Roy. He's so much fun. Buck was an absolute master at working an audience. You know, I really learned a lot working with Buck. And Chet was a musician extraordinaire. I mean, he was a perfectionist and but delightful and very down to earth. When I first met him in Nashville, was at his place on Music Row, and we were going to lunch and meeting some people, and he walked out his back door and started pulling some weeds there. And I thought, the great Chet Atkins. But he was so down to earth. He said, "Oh yeah, that looks better, doesn't it?"
So many memories. But you might be surprised to learn that many folks have memories of her as well. Not just from playing, but from her coaching, teaching, and guiding. You see, she sponsors 3 fiddle camps or festivals every year in Grove. One is the 3-day Labor Day Festival. Another comes in June. Fiddle Fest this past June saw students and attendees from 38 states registered. And in July, her big Cajun Festival. And she always brings in teachers to work with the students in workshops and, of course, special guest musicians. Additionally, she still tours and is in demand, great demand for personal appearances. The honors have been many, such as this one, of which she's most proud.
The most recent ones are I'm very proud of, the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame and the National Fiddler Hall of Fame. But you know, there's also the Western Swing Hall of Fame and the Mid-America Hall. There are a lot of them. But these last couple have been very, very heartwarming. You know, you don't think about that as an artist, as a musician, but when it comes, it's just like a beautiful surprise. You know, it's so nice to be honored that way.
But the most important things in her life aren't the honors that have come her way. What matters most is family. A son, a daughter, and 4 grandchildren. All are musical. Her son lives in California and is part of the Los Angeles Guitar Quartet.
He found his own instructor over at TU, Michael Fowler, and he started playing classically. You know, they sit differently, hold their hand differently, have a footstool, plunk, 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 plunk. I heard coming I was on tour, of course, and I'd come home and hear this scale and see this and think that's gonna last about 2 days. Next time I went out and came back, and he just kept on. Now he's a member of the Los Angeles Guitar Quartet, and fabulous, fabulous group.
The late David Bowie once said, "Tomorrow belongs to those who can hear it coming." Well, it's safe to say tomorrow belongs to this lady. Like I said in the beginning, she's one of those who can hear what others can't. A special talent, and she shared it with all of us. So, if you're one of those folks who've always wanted to go out and dance in the moonlight, there's nothing wrong with that. Some night when the moon's just right, go ahead. Get out there and kick up your heels. Chances are, if you do it, you'll be dancing to music being played by Jana Jae.
Well, you know, music is everywhere. You never know when you'll be inspired, but it's everywhere.